Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful. And the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
All right, guys. Tuesday. I think we might get a move today. I tell you what, it's very unusual and quite unsettling to me that we get to this point and there is still this much uncertainty about what the Federal Reserve decision will be. So we got a decision. Well, they'll be making the decision today and then they'll be telling us tomorrow. And we've been getting some moves up that the market has been repricing back to 50 basis points, primarily off of the back of articles from Nick Timiraos at the Wall Street Journal. So, does he know something? Is he trying to push us towards 50 basis points or no? I'm not sure. And I don't know what it's going to be anymore, but the market may catch wind today of what it's going to be and we can get some big moves. Let's go and look at the charts. Okay, so we're rolling oil over to November today. All right. So here's the ZN. Okay. Well, they were saying that there was a little bit of an up move overnight because of the Nick Timiraos story, but when you look at it, it's still pretty gentle and not above these longer run highs. So that is interesting. S&P 500 looking pretty good overnight though. Is that above this area over here? Interesting. So we are coming up on like a blackout period and everything where I think that stocks could struggle a little bit. October tends to be a rough month. So oil recovering, not quite above 70 now that we're in November, but it's looking not too bad. So that's interesting. November is lower than September was, or October. Yeah. Okay, gold still holding those big gains from a few days ago. Kappa, ooh, big move yesterday in copper. Well, we had noticed that, right? But when it was all done, because it kept going after our stream, yeah, that copper looks really good. Now they're coming into some resistance. We'll see. Does look like they bounced off of that pretty hard too. So maybe sometime before they're able to break through that. Japanese yen continues to look pretty good, and the dollar, well, just barely at 100. You know what? And this, it surprised me that the dollar has stayed over 100 as long as it has, because it's unusual for it to be above 100 historically. And then you got Bitcoin coming back from that 60K, trying to get there, but not quite. Bitcoin just still looks like a mess to me. Like, look at how much randomness there is in the price and everything. It's this one. So let's meander on over. Oh, I'm gonna make sure that my news squawk is on first of all. And let's see here. Do we get anything today? Oh, we got Canadian numbers in 3 minutes. Oh, US core retail sales. Retail sales. Timiraos story. Pre-FOMC trends. So what I mean by this is it is not uncommon on the Tuesday and Wednesday before a Federal Reserve meeting to see strong trends in the treasury markets that somehow are able to predict what the Federal Reserve is going to do or say. And those trends can be incredibly powerful, and there's a very high chance of seeing one of those today. So we want to be on the lookout for that. Let's see here. Do we have anything a little bit later? Not really. 20-year bond. I think that's it for today. So that means, and by the way, the liquidity is looking pretty light. So they are looking to this retail sales here number here, which is let's see here. U.S. retail sales month over month are looking for a reading of -2, and core retail sales month over month are reading of spot 2. It makes sense because core is excludes autos and energy and autos, I think it is, and the auto industry prices have been coming down pretty hard, right? So the core is really the number that we're gonna pay attention to the most. There we go. Okay, so core not as high as expected spot 1 versus an expected spot 2, but the headline retail sales number, spot 1 versus an expected negative spot 2. So the auto industry doing much better than anticipated. I do think, though, that this should be dovish, slightly dovish. So they are buying a little bit. You can see that. And it looks like some robots got it wrong, though, man. It looks to me like something that should be positive, but like they got some quicksand there. Ooh, okay, there we go. But I'm a little bit worried about trading it here in the micros. See the gap. Really high chance of me getting stuck in a bad position there when it's doing that. Especially, okay, so somebody did come in with a big order, and then, you know, there wasn't any follow-up, and now they're going back to the other side of the range. Still being plots. What do you mean by plotted at last month's high? Are you saying that they just can't seem to get over that resistance there? Hammered down. Yeah. Well, that was actually really interesting because when you look up here at the highs in this area, I don't really see very strong evidence of what I would call quote unquote resistance, right? But then when it backed off of it, then really big sell orders came in and slammed them down. So that kind of reads to me more like the buyers were reluctant to try and press that level, and when they did, the sellers came in with a counter move. rather than them just running into straight resistance, you know. That it's that I think is an important thing to note. Because, you know, if it was just like what I would consider traditional resistance, I think that you would see a lot of absorption in these areas. It would have taken a lot to get above 21, for instance. And, you know, these guys would all be taking profits there, and there would be, you know, correlations involved and all of that sort of stuff, right? But instead, this was, hey, you had every opportunity to take it and you didn't. And then the counter order came in. A counter order like that is likely to be a little bit more speculative in nature, right? So if that's the case, then I think going forward here today, we at least at this moment, well, let's not put it like that. That means that the endogenous factors are going to be more important. Okay. Now, that's not necessarily favorable to us, right? The more that those internal factors are involved, essentially, like, the more random things are going to be. So, but could also mean if at some later point we bounce back up into that area, which is not too crazy, especially just back to like 18, right? You could probably see quite a bit of people getting pushed out of positions back the other way again as well. I think that the rate cut itself will be the thing that cuts them up. Well, let's start a poll again. Because yesterday, most of us were saying 25 basis points, but now the market pricing is 75%, was the last that I heard. 75% chance of a 50 basis point cut. So this is a fun game. Should I be putting money on this game? I don't know. I'm not confident on the answer. Nick Timrose has posted a lot. Nick Timrose has posted 2 stories now. But the reading that I get from his stories is that they don't really know. That it's probably the case that like close to half of the participants think that it should be 50 and half the participants think that it should be 25. That's kind of what I think is going on. And so the Federal Reserve doesn't like that uncertainty, especially if it's hawkish. I guess in this case, the uncertainty is kind of on the dovish side. Oh, okay, we get a dovish surprise. The market should like that. But still, I don't think that they like to, keep people on their feet like that. And in my opinion, the only explanation for why we would be allowed to get to this point and it be unclear what the Federal Reserve is going to do is because the Federal Reserve themselves don't know. That's my bet. So that's puts me in a position of really uncertain. I thought that it should be a 25 basis point cut because there is still some signs of economic strength out there. There's definitely some signs that we need to bring interest rates back. But I kind of wonder still if it's a situation that you really can't have your cake and eat it too. That in order to stabilize interest rates, you're going to cause more inflation. And so it's, the soft landing is extremely difficult to achieve. Like that it's intrinsically difficult to achieve. Now, I think also if we got down to it and it was like half said 50 and half said 25, I think that the Hawks would win. I think that the Hawks would win that discussion. I think that they would say, like, look, the economy is still doing okay with our current rates. And while there are some signs of labor market stress, it's not something that is so big that, it's already past the point of no return and we're about to get into a job market spiral, sort of the thing that creates a recession. And so they should be able to just do 25 basis point cut, see how the market reacts. I think the thing in favor of a 50 basis point cut was that we did have some data that really strongly suggested that they should have been cutting last time. But I'm just not convinced that like being one meeting behind is that big of a deal. So yeah. But either way, I think that the strategy here is the same. Stay really, really open-minded about the flow and keep an eye out for a persistent slow creeper. It is better to listen to the bond market than to the Fed and well, I don't know about that one, man. Because if you go and you look at the data, what you're going to find is that the bond market we're just talking about the bond market here, aren't we? The bond market doesn't predict what the Federal Reserve really ends up doing very well at all. And I've been reading this book, Making Sense of Chaos, by Doyne. I don't know how you say his name. Is it Doyne? Doyne Farmer? But this is a guy that his study is complexity economics. A lot of the things that we know, like the square root law and all of these sorts of things, are things that we kind of learned and arose out of complexity economics. And as he's going through and he's relating these stories about different studies that he's done, the big kind of theme is that the market is innately chaotic to a degree. So like, for instance, they did this thing where they would create a game, and they would say like, there's two players and each player can take turns making a move. And then they would look to see, does that game ever come into a Nash equilibrium of some sort, right? Like especially if it's a zero-sum game, like the person that wins makes everything that the person that lost, right? And they found that the more competitive the game was and the more moves that you had, the more chaotic the game tended to be, and the less likely that there was a quote-unquote Nash equilibrium in that game. So this just goes back to this whole thing that like the idea that the market would be an accurate, efficient indicator of all available information based on what we know from complexity economics and everything is almost comical. There's just, on the short term, there's a lot of chaos. So I really don't think that the market knows. I really don't. Maybe Nick Timmeros knows. I mean, I think that the market is, if Nick Timmeros had not said anything, we would probably still be pricing 25 basis point cut. So the question that you really have to ask yourself is, do you trust Nick? And two, do you think that he actually knows something? Because he hasn't said that he actually knows something. It's just he's posted two stories that like it'll be close and maybe a pretty good chance of a 50 basis point cut. And that's what the market is working off. Well, with that said, The treasuries did just breach the lows there, and the flows overall in the volume is negative. So I'm glad I didn't touch that. You know, when I was looking at that, I was like, well, chances if I take it at 3.6 there and it coming back on me is pretty high. But I didn't think it was going to come all the way back over here. Now, when I'm coming back all over here, though, I think it's the same thing. I think the chances. But this is a very different flow, right? Like, there's like 3K at 12.5. So, like, they are running into liquidity down in here. Where does that put us, like, on a relative basis? Well, yesterday's lows were at 09.5. Yeah. Oh, and Uzi's thinking the same thing. Gonna be a fight near yesterday's low? I think you might be right. I mean, the market's already showing us, you know, decent volume, decent liquidity, rather. So it probably will be a bit of a fight. Then again, if it depends also on how quickly they do it. Like, if we find ourselves down there in like the next 5 minutes, then I think that means that this sell flow is really strong and that they're probably going to blast through it. At the moment, though, I couldn't say. I think that there's a chance that we don't get there yet, that there's at least some degree of a pullback before we get that. Low risk hero trades? Well, the thing that's always in my mind, if I'm thinking about trying to take a trade, right, is do I really actually have an edge? Like, do I really know something the rest of the market doesn't about what the future flows are going to be? You know? Because one of the things that keeps me out of a lot of these areas is I kind of see the chaos to it. I go, oh, that kind of perked my interest, but do I actually know anything? No. That might just lead to more chaos, and often it does. So it does look like we're getting a pullback. Let's see how far back they pull. How far back they pull, and then how quickly we get downside again, if that's the way they decide to go.
Block sell.
I was really interested in this thing about a game in the Making Sense of Chaos book. I kind of wonder, I would love to see them do that study, but like from a game maker's perspective. Like, okay, the more rules you have, the more chaotic the game becomes. But then when the game becomes too chaotic, players find the game too difficult to play, and so they stop playing. Or, you know, they lose too much, they stop playing. And so how do you find some is there an equilibrium between the game maker and the players? Because when I think about both game developers is one side of it, and then the other side of it that we could look at is the economy itself, right? So like in a game, if I'm developing a video game, is there an equilibrium? There's some sort of optimal area where we have a certain amount of complexity that is enough to keep the game interesting for players, but and is also enough that you know, lower skilled players feel rewarded enough to keep playing, but not so complicated that they feel that the game is too hard and they stop. Is there that balance? Because from what we've learned just about the game itself, kind of suggests that maybe there's not, and that you're always going to have this shift between making the game too easy and making the game too hard and complex. and that it will shift back and forth like that. And if that was the case, then is the same thing true in the economy? That the economy and the policy is always going to continually shift. Like you get that pendulum, and that pendulum is kind of almost a necessary part. It was another story he talked about was they did a model where they were just modeling household spending versus saving. And like they built this model so that, like, you know, when they save, that money goes into stocks, and as the price of the stocks go up, they make more money and they have more income to spend. But then when people in the neighborhood see that you're spending so much and how much nice stuff you have, they go and they ask you what you're doing, like how much are you saving, and then they try and copy you, right? And when they did that, they had a variable that was basically like, how often do you go and check and change your saving rate, right? And they found that if people didn't adjust their saving rate at all, that the economy would basically stagnate and go down. Like even if they went to like what is a optimal saving rate, like that economy would just kind of flounder and go nowhere. But once they adjusted that variable to reasonable numbers that would be kind of reasonable relative to like what people in real life would do, then you started to get oscillations and the economy would do well. Like it would go between good and bad, but overall the economy would grow and get stronger over time. And so there was like this oscillation in this shift between people saving too much and spending too much is like a necessary part of a working economy. Right? In other words, the chaos is a necessary part of the market. So if the chaos is a necessary part of the market, then the question is, what do we do? What do we do? Well, unless you really have an edge, you're just going to be at the whims of chaos. Adam G says, thanks, you're welcome. I don't know what you're saying thank you about. And good morning, A. Paul. So we put the poll up. 6 of you have voted so far, and you are still leaning on 25 basis points, huh? Even though the market says that it's going to be 50? I mean, I think I personally want it to be 25 basis points. No, I take that back. If it was 50 basis points, that'd be awesome. Right? It probably would be a good thing for us, at least maybe short term. The job market would probably unfreeze considerably. It probably would be good for people overall. Probably be good for our assets, most of our assets. But I'm kind of terrified of the 50 basis point cut. Is that why are you guys coming down on 25 basis points? Because my thinking is I'm kind of afraid of the 50 basis point cut. I'm afraid that the 50 basis point cut starts inflation again, and then we have to hold interest rates where they are like that for a longer time, which would continue to create damage in certain parts of the economy. Octavia says, yep, so that's your thinking too. That the 25 basis point, the 50 basis point cut is a little scary. It sounds to me like something that we could model with chaos dynamics. In fact, that they did I saw some models that were kind of along those lines. It's just like, could they modify the model to specifically test 25 versus 50 basis point cut? Well, probably we'll find out afterwards. Probably we'll find the answer. They'll tell us the answer. Actually, we did this, and yeah, actually, the 50 basis point cut was the right thing, or not the right thing, or whatever. Let's see here. Oh yeah, I brought my calendar up just to make sure if there's anything going on over here. I really hate this. Oh boy. So 50 says something is broken. I'm coming over here to Zero Hedge and seeing if they got anything on the information. President of PA manufacturing town exposes reality of a Haitian great job replacement. Wow. They're really losing jobs that much in Pennsylvania? You know, I look at a lot of what's going on in the campaign. You know, I think that most of what Donald Trump does, you know, he genuinely believes it. But I also do see like this level of like, well, it probably also does help him. Like, there's this interesting dynamic between, okay, if you're importing a lot of immigrants, that does kind of push down people's wages, and that does put a lot of pressure on cities and towns. But because of the way that the metrics work and everything else like that, you're going to see economic growth from it. So like there is an argument to be made that in the end we're all better off. Yes, we're all better off, but at the cost of individual people's lives, quite frankly, right? And here in this case, I think that democracies has been up to this point, for, well, let's not say completely, but to in some instances, you're seeing democracy be that counterweight that it's supposed to. That, okay, if individual people's lives are being hurt by a policy, they'll vote a certain way and change it. And I think that that's largely where you get Donald Trump from. Is these people, they are hurt by the immigration. And yeah, because like what he was saying yesterday, he was like getting really anti-Haitian. It was like these people are animals. I don't think that he was saying that Haitians overall were animals, but he was referring to certain subgroups of immigrants that were animals, right? And I hear that and I'm like, well, I don't think that plays very well. But then I think about it and I'm like, well, except for the people whose jobs are at risk and their town is being flooded, I think that those sorts of tactics resonate very strongly. You know? Depends on how deep the hole is dug to. Facebook and Instagram ban Meta following Biden administration directive. Well, how do I feel about that? I don't like the administration telling social networks who to ban and so forth. I don't like that there's a news source anywhere that I can't, or information that I'm not allowed to see. But RT is propaganda. So is propaganda and pushing things that are objectively harmful to the United States. So what do you do? Okay, they kind of went sideways for a little bit and then fell through a little bit here. So like hitting that liquidity at like 12.5 did do something. I guess we didn't get that much of a pullback though, did we? It was only like 4-tick pullback. Now they're pressing the lows again. I think that liquidity is probably still going to be there. I would note that the liquidity is not as... We're not seeing any 5Ks yet. So yesterday...
Block sell.
There was a change my view post, which I guess that subreddit is more popular than I thought. Because I made a post in there. This guy was saying, well, the people that are voting for Donald Trump are either anti-democracy or uninformed. It was his argument. And I said, essentially, well, that's silly. There's lots of people out there that are reasonable people and have the same information that you have and are coming to different conclusions than you are. And that just all has to do with like what their life experience is and what sort of things that they value and all of this other stuff. And to think that you know more than everybody else is a really foolish thing, because we aren't very good at knowing how much we know compared to other people. I really think my experience has been just, you know, from talking even to regular everyday people that I wouldn't expect to know hardly anything about this stuff, know a lot about the whole January 6th thing and have very strong opinions about January 6th. Most of the people around here in my area think that it, you know, that the idea that it was a government coup is ridiculous. And they have very well researched arguments as to why. I honestly think that the liberal argument that it was a coup is kind of based on kind of a farcical argument, to be honest with you, because basically they say like, okay, so the horror. So like, if you knew that the election was rigged, like you saw them rig it, and the government doesn't pay attention to you, like this is what's happening in Venezuela, right? So pretty much everybody knows that like they all voted against the guy, and he still won. So they're all pretty sure the government's not going to let them investigate to really find the smoking gun, but they're all pretty sure that the election was stolen, right? And so they go out and they protest. So was that an anti-democratic action? No, it's not. So I say that the people's intentions when they're doing that are kind of key to what it actually was. These people, they think that an election is stolen, ergo, protesting the quote-unquote stolen election is not an anti-democratic action. But the Democrats kind of play this strange, bizarro world where what ultimately matters is whether or not the election was actually stolen. And since the election was actually stolen, if you're protesting that election, it's undemocratic, even though it's just a case of that they're mistaken, rather than that they're objectively trying to, you know, like, look, they're not trying to tear down the government because they didn't like the answer. It's because they didn't think that it was a legitimate election. So to call it like a coup and is absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. But like that's the argument that the left makes, right? And I only find it interesting in as much as that it kind of seems to me like the left is very ignorant of how they think and how people think. They have you ever seen this this Kellyanne Conway clip where she describes the left and she's like, I think that the left, they wake up every day, it's January 6th, the date never changes, and then they wake up and they go down to their local abortion clinic and get an abortion. You ever seen that clip? Oh, I think that's so funny. Well, the left has this caricature of the right, and their caricature of the right is that they spend their whole evening watching Fox News every day and masturbating to Donald Trump's Truth Social feed. That's their caricature of the right. But did you know that only 20% of Republicans regularly watch Fox News? Only 20%. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that Fox News has a bias and Fox News doesn't give you the whole story. But it's only 20%. And I've actually seen many stories. So for instance, there was a Pew survey where they did a survey and they tried to judge, which side of the aisle was more informed on the news items. And the Republicans were like 18%, scored 18% better on their test than the Democrats did. So, not all of them were watching it. In fact, I think that by and large conservatives hate Fox News now too, by the way. So maybe they should do that with, what's the news network that replaced them? One American News Network or whatever. Yeah, especially after Tucker left, they really don't like Fox. It's true. That's their caricature, and so they think that almost all differences between Republicans and Democrats come down to Republicans not being as informed as they are, and it's absolutely ridiculous, because the reality from what I see, especially on some of these key issues like January 6th in particular, I think that the Republicans know more about January 6th than the Democrats do. Many of the things that I see from Democrats about January 6th are incorrect or way overly simplified. Like I had this one guy and he was saying, well, they proved in court that he knew he was lying. No, they didn't. There was the congressional hearings where a lot of aides said that they told him that the election wasn't stolen, but he didn't believe them. There's no proof that Donald Trump doesn't genuinely believe that the election was stolen. They said he admitted that the election was stolen on the Lex Friedman podcast, but they brought that up at the debate, and he said, "No, I wasn't admitting that the election wasn't stolen. I was being sarcastic." Like, pull up the cost, but yeah, sure. I don't know if in this situation it's working very well, at least in Xi'an, because like we went well past like that stop outline. There wasn't enough. Essentially, I don't think that there was enough of volume on before that news to really be able to judge anything. But the balance back is up at 16, which seems like on the chart looks really far away, but it's only 4 ticks. So. Anyways, so yeah, so where do differences come down to, right? Well, most people, like one of the problems in economics is that they'll say like each individual has their own utility function, and they're able to sort out which action gives them the most utility. Well, no, because most people aren't able to do the sometimes very sophisticated math to be able to determine those sorts of things. So what do people do instead? They use intuition and heuristics. That's what they do. So when you look at January 6th, for instance, you hear a piece of information. What's happening is these guys are hearing the same piece of information. The Democrats are very prone to the heuristic of relying on experts and people in authority. They do. I mean, I don't think that was always the case, but that is what the modern Democrat Party has been, is, they go along with whatever the government tells them. And the Republican Party, because the Republican Party is basically the anti-government party, like really the Republican conservative movement has really become about distrust in government and trying to reduce the size of government. And so the heuristic that they're going to use always is that the government is trying to screw them over. That's kind of like an overly simple, that seems like maybe a ridiculous heuristic at first, but then when you look at the reality where it's like, in a situation like that, if the government is lying to you, how are you supposed to know? There's no way that you can really know. And if you just always assume that they're lying to you, then you in those instances where they are lying to you, you're going to catch them, and you'll get rewarded, or at least in your mind, you'll be rewarded for correctly calling that. And that's probably why you're seeing more and more people do it, because there has been several prominent examples. You bring up Fauci, good example of where what the government told us wasn't correct. So that's the heuristic that they're using. That's why they interpret the information differently. And then after that, then you try and use all of the logic and everything that you have to try and explain your own intuition. That's the way that people work. And I made this comment on Reddit, and I thought it was like a pretty controversial comment. Like, I didn't expect it to do very well. And it got upvoted pretty crazy. Like, it's at like 250 upvotes, but it was probably like 60-40. Like, probably 40% were downvotes. So it was probably higher than that. And I was surprised because I didn't think that subreddit was that high. And then I started getting all of these replies to it that I'm not interested in. Like, I don't think I would have commented it if I'd known that it was going to blow up like that, because I don't want to respond to everybody. And they always try and do try and put it in a way that to try and, like, really poke you and really try to provoke you into a response, I think it's funny though, like, I think that first of all, two things. I think the idea that January 6th was a soft coup and an undemocratic, was intended to usher in some autocracy from Donald Trump is preposterous. And secondly, I believe that there is no evidence that the election was stolen, but it is a perfectly reasonable belief that we should expect a pretty large portion of the population that lost to believe. It's not, because their argument is like any reasonable person that knows what's going on would know that the election was not stolen, and that's simply not true. That just ignores how people actually function. And a third of Americans believe that the election was stolen, and it looks like that of those that don't believe that the election was stolen, there's still a very sizable portion of them that are willing to vote for Donald Trump. And the trajectory that we're on is Donald Trump's going to win. And then I'm going to go back and look at all of these Democrats, right? And I'm just going to laugh, because they are so clueless about what's happening, why people are acting the way that they are, and they're clueless about what's driving themselves. It seems that it very like a complete lack of self-reflection on their part. Like this whole kind of framework that they have to believe that they're the ones trying to save democracy and everybody else wants to usher in an autocracy is childish. You're childish if you believe that. And I think that they're going to be very surprised. Have you noticed a lot of governments simultaneously pushing a need? Well, yeah. Like, look, again, one of the strongest predictors of what people are going to do is what their incentives are, right? So people in power, if all of the sudden people are voting a way that the people in power don't want because of things that they're reading online, what are they going to do? They're going to want to try and change it so that those people, so that that stuff isn't online anymore. That's just the way that people work. And going back to the immigration thing, well, they say they're just pushing because, you know, these people are racists. Well, I would agree that there's a lot of racially insensitive rhetoric around it, okay? But I don't think that they're coming down on this side because they're racist. I think that they're coming down on this side because they are suffering real negative consequences from the policies that have been carried out over the last 50 years. Like, if you want people in the Rust Belt and the Midwest to stop thinking these things and stop voting this way, stop shipping their jobs overseas. Do you see this thing the other day, like when Kamala had like her first time that she actually like let the media talk to her a little bit? And they're like, you know, what do you think about the race? What are you doing here in Pennsylvania? And they're like, oh, we're really glad to be here in Pennsylvania. And, you know, because there's so many people here that need to be seen and heard. No, it's not that they need to be seen and heard. It's that you need to stop shipping their jobs overseas and flooding their towns with immigrants and pushing their wages down. Yeah, the anti-immigration rhetoric leaves open a window of opportunity for real racists to cut in. That in and of itself is the leftist only argument for talking about it at all. Well, like, yeah, because again, like their model of people is like way oversimplified, I think. I feel like this camera is a little bit tilted. I might have pushed it too much. I guess then the other side is that the Democrats have been like super conditioned to just be like sensitive to anything having anything to do with race and call it racist when it's not. But let me be clear. I've seen stuff in this. I'm seeing stuff in this campaign now that I think is. I don't like to use the word racist because I feel like that's a little bit too broad of a term. I'm gonna say it's racially insensitive. So it's not that they're saying something that implies that like certain people are genetically inferior and yada yada yada, but they are saying things about groups of people that might not necessarily be true. Or at least are being presented in a negative light that isn't fair to those people. Yeah. If oh well, maybe, yeah. But there is the thing is that does Donald Trump benefit from racist rhetoric? It seems like he does. Seems like he does. But again, that's not how people think. Like people don't sit down and think, well, I think that my race is genetically superior to other people, and ergo that must mean X, Y, and Z and all of these other things. No. What they do is they look at the world around them and they say, okay, what's happening in my life and what are the things that are working against me in my life? Well, my wages aren't as high because of competition from illegal immigration. And there aren't as many job opportunities because my jobs have been shipped overseas, right? So they are responding to the actual economic conditions, and then everything that comes off of that is really just to try and justify the decision that their subconscious has already made, right? That's generally how it works. What's the odd of both shooters being in black? Man, was this other guy in a BlackRock commercial? White people are really good at hating themselves the worst. So like on this, like, here's the thing that I think is really, really wild about it, is that, okay, is there like racially insensitive rhetoric? I'd say that. So what was it? Donald Trump calling people animals. I don't think you should do that. Granted, he might be saying, these are people that he's talking specifically about gangs or something like that. I'm still, that would be something that I personally would be like really careful about saying. Now that Lauren, what's her name? I can't even remember her name now. But she was saying that, like, the White House will smell of curry and all of that. So that is so inappropriate. Loomer. Yeah, Loomer. I thought that what she said was so inappropriate. Okay. So like there's definitely stuff like that coming out of that camp that I disagree with, right? But the thing that I find ironic is that when I look at it, that kind of rhetoric seems to be helping them the most among the black population. Right? Like, when you go and you look at the surveys, the white people have the lowest in-group affinity. That is to say, do white people like other white people? And they don't. It's like everybody hates white people, and then white people don't really like themselves. But the group with the strongest in-group preference is black people. Black people really, really like other black people, and they don't like other races so much, or hanging out with other races so much, is kind of what the surveys show. And so when you come in and you say, like, your town is being taken over by Haitian immigrants, a lot of the black people are some of the ones that respond the strongest to that, is what I've seen. Because those are the communities that are like being let's not say being replaced, but like suffers some of the most negative consequences from it. Yeah, nobody else has out-group preferences. And I would bet that it's largely cultural. I bet it's largely women. Well, I wish that they would do surveys about this, kind of comparing areas where this stuff is happening. Because I think that if you're a white woman in an upper middle class neighborhood where you don't have to worry about things like this, that it's really easy to. But if your way of life is under threat, then people's natural instincts tend to start to take over, and they tend to stick to their own people, let's say. You think its root is fat? Well, now you're getting into something that seems so left field that I'm not sure what to even say to you. Wait, you're saying that white women have a strong out-group preference because it's a fetishization thing? Okay. He says yes. That's I think we'd have to present a lot of information for me to even begin to comment on that. there's the weird things about like, you know, like especially in the most racist. Well, okay, so there's one thing about that subject that I've always found weird is like that the fetishization of things that are taboo, that people tend to get attracted to things that are socially taboo. So like if you live in a southern area, interracial porn is like much more popular in those areas because it's taboo. Yeah, it's almost never a white dude with a black or brown woman in it. I would agree. I've seen some commercials that did have that though, but you're right. It's by and large it's a white woman with a black man. Basically, even when companies are trying to be like DEI, certain kind of cultural preferences and so forth still come out that are kind of a little bizarre sometimes, I think. We're getting like way off topic here though. Like I really kind of think that you're driving me into territory that I can't really back up what you're saying, or because it's just so weird and left field that the reason we were talking about it was because yes, like the things that Donald Trump are saying, it seems like they do help him. It seems like they do help him. And coming in and telling people, well, that's racist, doesn't help. What helps is showing people that you're actually going to do something about the problems that they're facing. That's what I think. Can you imagine, like, no, it's not because in the back of my mind, and I know it's true. I'm not sure I even understand what you're saying completely. And like, I would have to think about like, what are all of the like, I'm not going to make an intuition leap like that. I'm gonna have to think about it logically. But what was I gonna say? So like, if we rewind and we go back, okay, and Bernie Sanders won in 2016. It was Bernie Sanders and versus Donald Trump could be one scenario. And then we could have another scenario that would be, well, who do you think could possibly have beaten Donald Trump in the Republican nomination? Like, if Donald Trump hadn't won, who could it possibly have been? Ted Cruz, I guess. Okay, so if it was Bernie Sanders versus Ted Cruz, for instance, maybe. Or no. Let's say we're in an alternate universe where Donald Trump doesn't exist, okay? And Hillary loses to Bernie Sanders, and Jeb Bush is the Republican nominee. The reason I choose Jeb Bush is because Jeb Bush is like the establishment candidate, right? Okay. Alternate history, okay? If the Democrat Party had allowed Bernie Sanders to win, even if he had lost that election and we had a president, Jeb Bush. It's so bizarre to think about. But I can't bring myself to think about Bernie Sanders being president. Okay. But the reason why I set that scenario up is because then the outsider and the person that it would be pushing for these people in the Rust Belt that are, feel displaced, it would be the Democrat Party. And all of the dynamics that you're seeing here today would be the exact opposite. I think so. I think that it would be The Republicans would be the ones that are all complaining about everything being racist. The Democrats would be the one complaining that elections are being stolen from them. Because the true schism in the politics today is whether you believe in the neoliberal globalist policy ideals that we've had for the last 50 years, or if you are in favor of helping these people that have been disadvantaged by these policies for the last 50 years. Basically, people in the Rust Belt that had all of their manufacturing jobs shipped overseas. Right? And everything else that you're seeing is just a consequence of that. So these people in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, etc., the Rust Belt, that are voting for Donald Trump, it's primarily because Donald Trump is the only person saying you've been wronged and we should change it. If the Democrats, if we'd gone down into a different timeline where, because that's what Bernie Sanders was saying too, and so it was the Democrat Party that was taking that position, then everything that you would say would flip around. But I don't understand what you're saying there with that last comment, Koozie. It was NAFTA that killed the U.S. Thanks, Bill Clinton. You know, I don't know if I want to point to any one individual policy. I don't know if I could sit here and count out to you all of the different things that NAFTA did that were bad. One of the things that kind of bothers me in this discussion on globalist policies and particularly when it comes to trade is that it's presented as the option is to have free trade or to not have free trade. When you don't have free trade, you impose tariffs, they impose retaliatory tariffs, and overall the economy is harmed and so we shouldn't do that. And well, the history on tariffs is pretty clear that tariffs aren't very effective. If it's a bargaining chip and you put it in there and then the other country agrees to something, then that's great. But if they don't agree to something and you just put the tariff in and you leave the tariff there, it's generally overall negative. Okay, but that's like not the only thing that's going on. We have things in our tax code and things that are working in our tax code that straight up encourage people, like give people tax breaks to go and ship jobs overseas and then just import all of the goods. Right? So it's not just quite as simple as just like let's have free trade or not free trade. Okay? Let's have free trade and also protect the people that we have here. Like right? They present a false dichotomy. But were there things about NAFTA that were negative for Americans? Yes. For certain groups of Americans? Yes. And you see that, like, yeah, probably America is probably richer today than it otherwise would have been without NAFTA. That's probably true. Okay. But it came at the expense of some individuals. And that group of individuals has become large enough that it's swinging our elections. It's a vicious cycle, though. High quality of life isn't cheap. That makes local labor expensive. That pushes labor to cheaper markets. Are you saying that the American way of life can only be maintained by having essentially slave labor somewhere? I know that I'm presenting it in like a super negative seeming light, but that's the way that I see it. I would hope that you're wrong, but I don't know if I can prove that that's correct or incorrect. That is the way that it kind of works, though, is it kind of seems to me that whenever you go into a rich area that there's a little ghetto next to it. I still don't understand what you're trying to say. Not only do I not understand the thing that you're saying right now, but I don't understand how it relates back to what you had said earlier. Okay, let me put it a different way. Let me go back. Okay. I think that when you're talking about, okay, dating, like interracial romantic relationships, okay, there are some kind of, let's say, strange statistics in there about all of that, but I think that those statistics are very easy to explain. People want to marry somebody that's rich, and race can be a pretty significant signaler of wealth, which is why, you know, women, they want to marry up, they want to marry somebody that's richer, and that's why almost all races would prefer to be married to a white man. Versus, and that's why, for instance, it's really common for a white woman to be married to a black man, but it's not very common for a white man to be married to a white woman, because, or sorry, to a black woman, because in terms of like the wealth demographics of black women overall, black women are at the bottom of the heap. They are tend to be the poorest. That doesn't mean that, like, an individual person, that a black woman can't be rich or anything like that, but that's kind of people's impressions, and so that's why they have those preferences. And that's why I think that you see that, and I don't understand the fetishize, what you were talking about with the fetishization. And you know, it's kind of like an uncomfortable thing to talk about, but I think that it's pretty well established and agreed that that's why it happens that way. Going back though, I also think, like with this thing with Donald Trump, that it's Haitians is like a key part of it too. Like I think that the discussion would be different if it was that their town was being taken over by Mexicans, right? Like, can you imagine? Oh no, there's too many people out there to build houses and things with. Like, I think that on a personal level, Americans by and large really like Mexicans, and Mexicans in particular, more so than other parts of South America, because the racial stereotype is that they're hardworking people and all of this, and so Americans actually like that, right? Haiti though, Haiti's different, man. The racial stereotypes of Haiti are completely different. That's like everybody there practices voodoo, and they've like completely destroyed their country and their island. Okay, like Haiti's not a very successful country. We can say that. Haiti is terrifying. Some of the stuff that has gone down in Haiti is outright terrifying, right? That doesn't mean that the Haitian... So first of all, as far as I understand, these Haitian immigrants are not illegal. So that's one thing. I think that a lot of people just kind of assumed that, and they didn't actually ask the question, but they're not illegal as far as I can tell. Dang. But then, does that mean that all of those Haitian immigrants are practicing voodoo? I guess I would need to have evidence. And that's the thing, you're not going to get evidence. Like, if Haitians are abducting animals and eating them, how would you prove it? Because obviously they're going to do it in the night and like in a way that nobody sees them, right? People in the area think that that's happening, That's the crazy. That's the thing to me is that the people in the area think that that's happening. I don't know if that it actually is. Kind of seems to me that we really don't have strong evidence that it is happening. So, is the whole thing a rumor created by racist stereotypes? It may be. It may be. But that's why, again, I say like that it's Haiti is kind of a key factor. Because, you know, all of these people, again, in the Rust Belt and Midwestern towns where the election kind of hinges on it, are kind of sitting there thinking, okay, well, how would I feel if my front yard was being completely taken over by Haitians? Right. But what I'm saying is the outward racism is just a proxy for feelings that they have because objectively negative things are happening to them in their life because of these policies. Well, it was. So what happened specifically was somebody posted on a Facebook group an accusation that they were abducting cats. Essentially, is what happened. It was a Facebook group post, okay, and then there was somebody at a city meeting that claimed that they were doing this, right? So then the internet kind of got hold of that, and so as evidence for that, people took the video of the cat eating lady getting arrested, but that was in like the other side of the state, and they showed pictures of this black guy carrying geese, which apparently was actually like a wildlife guy doing his job. So that picture was debunked too. Okay. So then after that, people went down and started like on YouTube and everything, started going down and interviewing the people, and like the residents believe that that's happening. But can you see how, like, especially with what, you know, the racial stereotypes of Haitians practicing voodoo and all of that the people are going to say, yeah, they're going to do that and they're going to steal cats and everything. But how do you prove that that's actually happening? It would be hard to prove. And everybody's just going to say, oh, I think it's happening, even though I can't exclusively prove that it is happening. But that's why it goes back. So Scott Adams was talking about this, and he was saying it's directionally true. It's directionally true, which is like, no, I don't think that they are eating cats and dogs. But what it does is it gets people to think about, okay, but are the people in that area being negatively impacted by the immigration? Yes. Yes, they are. They are. And the dogs and cats thing is just kind of like a cry for help. It's like, it's funny because I think that a Democrat listening to me right now would be like, Sept, you're perpetuating racist Republican rhetoric, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm trying to help you guys. I'm trying to help the Democrats here. I'm throwing them a bone. I'm saying, look, here's why this thing is happening and why you keep failing. It's because you're ignoring the real problem, which is that these immigration policies have negative impacts on certain groups of people, and you're just ignoring it. And if you actually like addressed the heart of their concerns, you would win elections, and Donald Trump wouldn't be a thing, and the Republicans wouldn't even come close to the Democrats in elections because they've got the population centers. So with New York and California, that's kind of like a big advantage. And all you got to do is have a policy that is acceptable enough to people in Pennsylvania that they'll vote for you. And the problem, and where they've come into this problem, was that Donald Trump saw that opportunity and said, oh, what they're doing is harmful to these people. I'm going to tell them something else. And so they start following him. That simple. That simple. If they had elected Bernie Sanders, completely different. Would be completely different. Even if they ran him and he lost, all of a sudden they would still be the party that's rooting for the average man, and Republicans would still be the party of rich, clueless country club people. I can take this another way. Okay. Say you're a Democrat and you want to ruin Donald Trump, right? How do you do it? How do you ruin Donald Trump? Well, let's put together all of this lawfare and use the government and do everything that we can to try and destroy him. And by utilizing the government in that way, it will diminish his stature and reputation in the eyes of the public, and they will stop voting for him. How did that one work out for you? It didn't work, did it? Why? Because these people that are voting for him intrinsically distrust government because they have been on the wrong side of government policy for so long. Here's how I would destroy him. I would invite him to every party. I would sing his praises. I would try and have him on every major news network that I could, and I'd be as nice to him as possible, right? Like, especially that correspondence dinner, the White House correspondence dinner that they have every year, and everybody is in Texas, and it's like a super, super fancy party, right? I definitely would make sure that he would be invited to that one, right? What I would do everything in my power to make him look like he is part of the club. That's what I would do. So I would make him look like he is part of the globalist club. And then these people wouldn't trust him to vote for him. If they just did the opposite. If they stopped trying to destroy him at every turn, and they just said, "Oh yeah, you're rich, you're part of the club," they wouldn't trust him. The voters wouldn't trust him. But instead, they've done the opposite, and they've made their situation worse. I think it's so funny. I think it's so funny. Hey, we've kind of bounced a few times, but they've been unable to reach this 11 area for some reason. I would have thought by now that we would have started to get this trend that I was expecting. And we're not. Maybe it happens later. Maybe it's too early in the... Maybe it's
Block
too
cell.
early in their meeting to know. Israel has hacked pagers and stuff that Hezbollah uses and causes them to explode? What? You know what, to be honest with you, I find myself over time, when this first all happened, I was super obsessed about it. And as time has gone on, I find myself more and more disengaged. Just because I feel like everybody is trying to influence me, that I'm getting like government sponsored propaganda from like 6 different locations, 6 different directions on it. And I'm just like, what I believe on this issue shouldn't matter. Wow, just like they caused the pager to straight up
Block
blow
cell.
up. Wow. Okay, so now it's happening. Is it now happening? I'm gonna try one. They're eating at 09.5. Might already be too late, so probably not gonna give this one too much of a leash. I'm gonna have to go and try and find what you're talking about now, Uzi, because I can't believe that a battery in a pager could actually like kaboom, or like a phone. Like I know that there's been all these things with like batteries overheating and things like that, and that like it's dangerous, but like enough to kill you? The explosion enough to kill you? Okay, I'm watching. Am I supposed to see an explosion? I don't even... that video looks like that's just a video of the aftermath. Huh. Okay, so they're hitting into 09.5, and there's an iceberg there. They're trying to take the 10 bid. Okay, took 4,000 contracts to do it. They're pretty maimed in the videos. Well, okay. Also, how could they... How could they do that? You know, I don't think that it would be possible to like send them the right kind of text message and yada 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 and cause it to happen. I think that in order to do something like that, it would have to be like one of those microwave device attacks. Like, remember this whole thing about how because cars have chips in them now and everything, that you can shoot the right kind of radiation at it and the chip isn't shielded, so that the interference affects the processing of the chip and can cause it to have a car crash. And people have identified situations where people, including journalists, have died under suspicious circumstances in car crashes, and that maybe it was one of those devices or attacks, right? Maybe it could be something like that, that you can use you could use those microwave radiation to cause a phone to explode, to cause a lithium battery to explode. That might be possible. Okay, so we got a little bit more. There's a bit of a liquidity hole now left behind between 9 and 10. Imagine a virus asks a simple device a million questions. Even a simple pager. Yeah, because see, like the issue with the pager is that a pager's not, well, it was only accepting the message, and you would almost certainly have error checking around that message. So I don't see how you would be able to. Okay, now a DOS attack, maybe. But enough to make the battery overheat? Most likely way to do that, from the things that I know, and I'm a pretty tech person, pretty heavy tech person, would be microwave interference. Send microwave interference that cause the chip to do things that it's not supposed to do and break the security measures and things that they have that prevents it from ever sending too much power to the battery and making the battery explode. I guess if you think that the government is coming after you, don't keep your cell phone on you, right? Good grief. Okay, so there's a little bit of liquidity building up. It's from rolling out underneath of us at 0.8 half. I'd say though that this sell has been pretty strong. Okay, now the S&P 500 is reacting, doing something. The treasuries seem to be following the yen downward. I kind of enjoy talking about the spy stuff, but like, you know, what if someday I decide to work for a defense contractor or something like that? Then we won't be able to talk about that stuff anymore, right? And that makes me wonder, like, should I be talking about it now? I don't think the government wants me to tell you that they have the ability to send microwave bursts to processor chips and cause them to do things. Like, but they can. Okay, there's 0.8 half, 2,000 contracts. Good offer. Okay, there was a brief uptick. Took about 2,000, now 3,000 contracts. But it's still holding, not really much of anything hitting at 18 though. I'm wondering if the S&P 500 is stabilized. I'm still a little curious as to what's going on over there. Oh yeah, we do have a Fed talker, but he's not going to be allowed to speak about any monetary policy, so that I wouldn't worry about that part. And what is the news at 8? US NAHB housing market index? That one's like B tier news. So I'm not so sure that that's going to do a whole lot to disrupt this trend. Yeah, it's light news. I like to call it. I like to go with the SABC kind of ranking. It's so funny. The other day I saw somebody. They were like, "Where does S come from?" Right? Well, let me give you the history of it. The ABC hearing originates from the fighting game world, and the S tier in particular comes from Street Fighter 2, because in the Street Fighter 2 there's that Indian character that is kind of stretchy, and he has so much range on his attacks that the character is just completely broken. So if you play in a Street Fighter tournament today, that character is usually banned. And that's where the S tier came from. The S tier means that character is so powerful that you basically can't be competitive in the game playing anything else. So in my ranking of news, S tier is non-farms payrolls, and Federal Reserve decisions. Right? Events that are so powerful that practically nothing else matters when they happen. S tier news. Whereas things like CPI are kind of more A tier. And this one, like NAHB housing index, so you could say it's a B or a C tier. Okay, so I'm seeing a decent amount of volatility here. It still looks heavy. It still looks heavy, but I don't know if that like super strong sell flow is still there. The Japanese yen still looks pointed down, but the dollar's moving. I feel a little bit torn because on one hand, I'm kind of seeing that the flow has subsided for now. I was able to get a little bit out of it, and given that circumstances, I wouldn't expect to get too much out of it. But I'm also still expecting like a strong trending flow to come through. And if this is like a hawkish repricing of the Fed decision tomorrow, like they could go way further than this, right? I think you'd be better off replacing ZB with ZT. I don't know about that one, man, because the ZB, I think that having ZT up would help. Let me put it this way. I think that the flow in ZT is so bizarre and different from the other instruments that I don't want to have it up. I don't want to have that up using space because I think that it will throw off my reading of the order flow. So I think that I probably should have a chart of ZT up if I had room for it, but I don't think I would want to put it on my DOMs. Unless I was going to trade ZT. Which I'm not sure it makes sense to trade ZT as a retail trader. Anyways, probably better off you get the same volatility amount in the 5-year, but a better ticket value and not having to deal with the weird Q rules of it. I think generally speaking, if something is happening over in the 2-year, that I get enough of a hint of it from the 5-year that it's okay though. Still seeing relatively big trades and like relatively large offers. Yeah, relatively healthy downticks. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to continue. It kind of means that this is like they've found an area that they can kind of play. You're going to look into leasing a seat. Well, the issue with ZT is I think that to be competitive over there, you have to be able to trade a super large size. Like you have to have millions of dollars because these guys, you get filled more if you have the large orders. So like it's an incentive to put up as much liquidity as possible. In other words, ZT wasn't built for you, right? ZT was built for banks. ZT was built for as an incentive for banks to put liquidity up. It will bend the knee. So my question is, what advantage do you think that you would be able to get over the other participants in ZT that would make it worth messing with? In the 10-year treasury, I think that there are situations where I can be faster than others. and the high liquidity works to my advantage, and that's why I traded CN. I don't think that I would have that advantage in ZT, especially not if I was putting limit orders out. Okay, so I was kind of hoping maybe they were going to test the downside again, but it really looks like they've got a liquidity hole here and we're stuck here. Yep, and back to the 10. So it's probably this whole area is like low liquidity zone now. Free movement across that. And the 10-year I was getting late in ZT because it's slower. I don't know if that's true. Try it for me and show me how it works, how it goes, I guess. I just say I'm skeptical of its utility, especially of reading the order flow. Like, if you're gonna read the order flow in it, you're gonna have to be like an expert in reading the order flow of ZT specifically, because it's gonna be different from any other instrument because the rules are different. Okay. The 5-year is kind of hinting at it, but I'm thinking that they're probably not going to go for it again. I can hold out hope, but probably we're gonna sit here for a while, and then maybe there might be another move later. Oh, okay, so they just hit the 08 half pretty aggressively. There was an iceberg there, but they cleared it. Okay, so that's a good sign. That's a really good sign. I mean, if they can start doing that at 08, I'm going to bet that you'll see orders pull at 08 before they really start hitting it, though. Like, those orders are staying there because the correlation hasn't changed. Market maker still thinks that 08 is a good price. So the market orders aren't going to hit it until they see some of them pull. Okay, you're getting a little bit of two-way low latent liquidity at 08 half as well, because there was a lot traded just now. There's a big click there. Oh, that's interesting. The click was a big order being added all the way up here at 18. Now there's a 6K up at 18. That's weird. Okay. This look is a little bit better. Still not seeing those bids pull, though. Okay. So very, very low latent liquidity there at 15 3/4 in the 5-year. Like they were straight up, nobody wanted to bid or offer there for a few seconds. S&P 500 is turning bullish now. Zero Hedge dropped the exploding pager story. Okay. Hundreds wounded and dead in Beirut after Israel remote. Oh, in Beirut. Wow. Okay, that makes it a big deal. That makes it a big deal. So I was saying, the only way I see how you would do that is like microwave interference sort of a thing. But how would you do that to all of them at once? It would have to be, probably would have to be a cyber attack of some sort, right? Which is really wild to think about. I mean, does Hezbollah, they all have the same type of device? Is it, what kind of a device is it? Can you show me the device, or is the device named? I don't see that in the, oh wait, these are pagers. It is a pager. Jeez, I don't know, man. That's pretty wild. So I find it curious. We've been ranging in this area for a while now. There have been points where it has felt very bearish, though. Iranian ambassador to Lebanon and wow. Like the thing that I'm trying to sort out in my mind is, okay, so that's a pretty wild attack that you can do. Why would you reveal that you can do that now? You know what I mean? It's a, I forget what the security agencies have a word for this. It's like a 0-minute attack or something like that. That basically, as soon as you use the attack, it then becomes useless to use after that, right? Like anybody that's in Hezbollah or whatever is going to know, like, don't carry that pager. Yeah, they did get a good uptick there. I was trying to finagle something about like to maybe take five ticks there, but I don't know if they can do that to me. I kind of think that if I was able to hold out long enough that they would go lower later, but that's probably going to be after I'm done, right? So. There's another uptick. I'd say that those upticks were on relatively light volume, but the whoa, and by the way, while this is happening, the Japanese yen has continued to fall. So that pullback back has a lot of suspiciousness baked into it. And Bitcoin is ramping off though. Oh, that's weird. Do you think that this story could be affecting the market? Because that's like the only thing I've seen going on. The most recent things that I'm seeing though are like Iran mayor news agency says Iranian ambassador to Lebanon was injured by a pager explosion. Scratched it. I think there was more than one opportunity that I could have gotten filled, but it was pretty tight. 30 contracts there. It's okay. Whoa. Okay, that is definitely... I think I can show you this. It's just this pocket just goes... That, that does look to me like a cell phone battery in a pager exploding. So I think something that I gotta watch here, since I got out of the trade, is I got out at 641. So at the moment, it's still basically where it was when I got out. Do they go beyond that and really justify me getting out? Or is that like as far as they go and then they turn back down? If they do that, then I'm gonna feel a little miffed. But I think I made the right choice. I think that I got into that flow really, really late, that there wasn't too much that I could have gotten out of it, and I overstayed my welcome a little bit too much, because, you know, the change in Delta is like a 20K change. And if we were really getting that flow that I was looking for, it would have gone through by now. Well, did he get filled? Did any of it get filled? Like, that's the thing you gotta remember. So that's why the flow over there is so effing weird. Is that they put up a ton of it because the more liquidity you have, the further up in the queue you get. So it's something that you'll see happen a lot is there'll be a huge order there. A little bit of it gets filled. And then when the amount that they want gets filled, they cancel the rest of it. Maybe it says no. Well, you know, it seems to me that, let's see here at 8:06. So right here. Right here. Right about here. was where the big order all the way up at 18, which is about where... Oh, actually, it's up here. Right there. Where a large order got put. So, like, as soon as that large order got put, the treasury started changing a little bit. I find that curious because putting a large order at 18 is really bizarre. Why would they do that? There's that just above the open. It's just a weird place to put a big order like that. And the timing of it is weird. Like, there's a lot of things that are weird about that. Really curious what would be driving Bitcoin. Because I'm thinking it must be because of this pager story. There you go. Elon Musk, Pennsylvania is a swing state. Parents in Charlotte, or I don't know how to say that. Charleroi, Pennsylvania, revealed that the majority of young kids in school are Haitians. Okay. Maybe now if I had stayed in it, I might be almost getting the 5. It's going to be tough. They might go. They might go without me, man. I don't know. If I was still in, I think I'd be even more nervous though. Like, because they have kind of moved up into they have kind of balanced back at a slightly higher range. Imagine if the wife of a Republican nominee or vice presidential nominee did a stump speech resembling Alyssa Sutherland in Evil Dead Rise. It would be nonstop coverage and punditry debating whether she was legitimately... Dude. Okay, yeah, so there's a video of Tim Walz's wife giving a campaign speech, and I'm thinking that they probably won't ask her to give many more speeches. Because she just looked absolutely crazy in that video. My mind is still stuck on that conversation we were having earlier before I took that trade. Because it seems to me that Democrats think that they just have to speak to something and you know, you come in and you say, well, what Donald Trump is doing and is saying is racist. And that should be enough for people to not vote for him. And what I'm saying is, well, maybe he does say some racially insensitive things. I don't think that he's racist, and I think that a lot of the attacks against him are unfair. But has he said insensitive things? Yes, he has. But he gets away with it because he was doing what they wanted. He was actually genuinely trying to help and speak to those people in those communities. And the left clearly is not. So if the election goes the way that it's looking like it's going to, the Democrat Party is going to have a big come to Jesus moment. They're going to have to say, oh, maybe actually we have to change our policies. Yeah. Being all globalist all the time is not working anymore. 5K at 09 half. I kind of feel like I'm still looking for like a flow on the short side, even though very clearly the scenario that I wanted to play out isn't happening. Okay, so here's another thing about this this Hezbollah pagers story is you know, they're saying wounded. It doesn't look like it was really killing people. So again, I kind of wonder, like, what about this makes that a worthwhile attack for Israel? I really wonder. There's got to be more to it. Perhaps the objective is not to kill Hezbollah members as much as expose that they all have these pagers and like disrupt their communications network, and perhaps to disrupt it at like a key time. Yeah, it was their devices they used to communicate, so now they are afraid of communication and communication devices. Exactly. Like, you ain't gonna carry a cell phone with you now. No, I think terrorists will avoid phones now. Like, or let me say, like, probably terrorists were already avoiding phones because they knew that they could be tracked, but now then they thought that they had some sort of, you know, kind of way around it, and they're finding out, oh, nope, they don't. could yeah, it's maybe a good point. It's like it could just be disruptive enough to their operations that I think another key thing here though is like seeing well, I guess it's in Beirut, huh? It was against Hezbollah. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Because Hezbollah is the guys to the north that, you know, have kind of been saber rattling, but and it's seeming like Israel would do something and they haven't. So could it be a precursor to further military action in Lebanon? The Wall Street Journal, citing sources, reports that the targeted communication devices in Lebanon were part of a new shipment recently received by Hezbollah. Backdoor? I'm going to have to go and read r/conspiracy theory today, because I bet you there's going to be all sorts of interesting theories these people think is going on. Those guys are probably, let's see if they got, I bet you that subreddit is going in nuts. I haven't been over there in months. See, like I got 4 more replies to that stupid thread. People saying, no, fuck, Republicans don't know as much as me. There you go, they blew up their pagers. There's got to be more than that. 2. I guess we have to wait longer, but it's not fast enough for us, huh? I wonder what happens if China does this with our EVs. Oh man, this is a problem. This is a big problem. So how do you make cell phones and other devices with batteries in them invulnerable to this kind of an attack? Is it possible to protect them from this kind of an attack? Well, it seems to me like that maybe it was backdoored, or like, you know, there's a virus involved. So not any device that is, you know, has a battery in it is necessarily vulnerable to this specific attack. But yeah, I still think you got to be thinking as a country, like, okay, can I let any of my agents have cell phones on them now? Like, because yeah, like what if China does stuff? China. You know what? Donald Trump doesn't talk about China as much anymore. That was the way he said China was one of my favorite parts. Oh wait, what's this? Trump is eligible to sell his Trump Media shares this Friday, although he pledged last week that he will not do so. In this article, I discuss the implications for him if he reneges on that pledge. Yeah, if he does sell, that would be market manipulation and possible grounds to for the SEC to sue him. Sure. Do you trade gold? I watch it, but I don't think I've ever put even a sim trade in gold.
Block buy.
There's 10 half. Okay. So I never would have gotten filled at 645, and I would be underwater now. So I guess I did make the right call. I might have been able to take the 5 ticks out of it, but you know, anything less than 10 is kind of like, eh. Sometimes just the luck of the draw. Does seem like it's been happening to me a lot, though. I take the trade. This doesn't go very far. You know? Back to this. Let's just read the zero hedge story. An apparent covert Mossad operation has unleashed chaos in a southern Beirut neighborhood on Tuesday, resulting in large-scale casualties among Hezbollah operatives and reportedly Lebanese civilians. Telecommunication devices used by Hezbollah members began exploding, resulting in up to hundreds wounded in the suburb of Da'iya. There appears to be fatalities, according to graphic social media images. Reuters reports hundreds of members of Lebanese armed group Hezbollah, including fighters and medics, were seriously wounded on Tuesday when the pagers they used to communicate exploded. Okay, so that it is in one neighborhood kind of takes me back to maybe it is like a targeted microwave attack of sorts. Reuters journalists saw 10 Hezbollah members bleeding from the wounds in southern suburb. It is as of yet unclear how precisely and Israeli intelligence were able to infiltrate Hezbollah's telecoms, whether small bombs were placed in the pagers or possibly the result of some kind of large-scale cyber attack. But what is coming clear is that they were remotely detonated. Hezbollah officials cited anonymity, citing the incident the biggest security breach the group has ever faced since the start of the year-long conflict with Israel. Groups like Hezbollah often use low-tech devices to communicate with each other, given cell phones are easier for intelligence services to intercept. Residents said explosions were taking place even 30 minutes after the initial blasts. The report notes further, citing eyewitnesses, people are also urgently calling for blood donations, given this appears to be a mass casualty event. Local hospitals are said to be inundated with victims, as well as groups of family members nursing to entrances, trying to find out what's going on. Israel has yet to comment. See, I'm trying to look at like why what is their motivation in deploying this attack? Why now? Etc. 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 But that's probably the smaller story here. Like, what happens in Israel and Lebanon probably is small cookies compared to the effect that the world seeing that an attack like that can be done, the kind of effect that it will have on the world. Like, can you imagine just all of a sudden the cell phone of everybody in your town exploding? That is insane. That is so crazy to think about, that that's a possibility. This is going to change something, man. This is weird. There's a post on r/trading. Educating yourself is pointless. You know what? Like, part of my goal is to know as much about the markets as possible. The more that I learn about the markets, the more that I understand that chaos is just a natural, unavoidable part of the market. And that really puts a pretty big, damper on your ability to consistently make money from markets, particularly in short-term trading. And so to the perspective of if you just want to make money, it does kind of make sense that, like, actually the less educated you are, the better. Because who are the people that actually make money from this? The people that are like degenerate gamblers and take big risks and get lucky. And if you're smart, you're not going to do those. And that's probably going to prevent you from it ever happening to you. Okay, so I kind of put this off. Def, can you tell me, how do you see the correlation between ES and NQ and which one follows the other? So I would say that the most important instrument in there is going to be ES. NQ kind of is kind of what would we call it, co-integrated with ES, which is to say that it will follow along with it, but then it will trade within a range around it because there's a lot more volatility in CN. But in terms of like, does the ES move up before the NQ, or like, can you read that in the flows? It's going to happen so fast that you're not going to be able to see or take advantage of it. So I wouldn't focus too much on that. What I would focus on is what are things and situations where I can accurately predict the orders, where I can accurately say, okay, there's going to be 10,000 contract change in cumulative delta here. That's what you're looking for. You want to predict future orders. I want to read. This is a situation where I really want to read Reddit because I want to see all the crazy things that people say. Maybe if I just search for it. Okay. News. Sure, why not? r/Israel is the largest one. I'm gonna follow that subreddit. Do hedge fund traders like to prefer trading futures or forex? Oh, jeez. So when it comes to day trading moves, I think you would see a lot more activity in futures. Okay, trading current currencies is like a crapshoot, dude. Okay, on long time frames, momentum kind of trades that take months to develop. Then there's something there's momentum with currencies too, okay? But like on an intraday basis, a lot of what happens in currencies is random. They are like, for the institutional traders, that's like the hardest place for them to participate. The currency desks are a different beast from the other desks. Like the reality, I think that the reality is that if you want to be an informed day trader, that the best places for you to participate are going to be the treasury futures and in individual stocks. But you're going to have a pretty large wad. Like, you have to get above the day trading rule like 25K. But I think for it to really be worth it, you might need even bigger than that. Before would really be worth it to play that game in stocks. But I don't think that futures is a very good game for retail traders at all, because you can't really see what's going on, and you're not going to be privy to any of the information that would give you an edge. So it's just not worth even bothering. Might. Who's still at 364? We are. I think there's still a good chance that later, like I said, after I'm gone, that they go and they sell for more. What do you think about agricultural futures? Also very niche and not so many HFTs and are trading in there depending on the product. But yeah, so again, if you're informed, so like, I think that in order to trade the agricultural futures, you know, like, did you grow up on a farm? Do you know, like, what do you know about farming, and what do you know about that particular crop, right? Of course, there's lots of things that you can learn, but I don't know where you find that information. I really don't. But I've met people that have that information, and they have that edge, and it does seem like that there can be something in it for them. Especially, again, you know, like, I think in futures, like, probably the biggest place for futures is trading the basis. That's the thing that's crazy about it, is like, honestly, if we had like a few $1 million to all hold, you know, you go every quarter, you go and you buy your thing, whether it's bales of hay or treasuries, and then you sell the future against it. And we could all be making money doing that. Probably. But we'd have to have $1 million, and we don't. Somebody else has $1 million, and they're doing it for you. Bank. Or a commodities trading firm. Cargill does it for you. But that's trading the bases. That's kind of the trade that I kind of look at. That's like, you know, what would be like the best sort of trade for Seth, who just wants to be involved in the markets and consistently make money? Yeah, it would be trading the basis. I think so. Or running a fund. We should run a fund. Problem is that the momentum strategy doesn't seem to be working too well right now. So in Israel, in the r/Israel subreddit, the first comment is Mossad agents Tal, Efron, and Samsung are responsible. Oh, is that a joke? They're supposed to say Samsung and Tal Efron? Telephone? I don't know. Okay, it's a joke. I get it. Things that Israel can do are awe-inspiring. Can any other single country in the world do this kind of an operation? I don't know how many this killed, but it's a huge psychological strike. The fact that they could get that many people at the same time probably makes Hezbollah question all of their technology. Okay, so this subreddit's not giving me the kind of commentary that I want. Seems like r/Israel is a very pro-Israel subreddit. I didn't know that such a thing existed on Reddit. How can this happen? Did Shinbet somehow get explosives into the pagers? Or can pagers somehow be made to explode even though they contain no explosives? And who is still using pagers in 2024? I think a battery is hey, this isn't necessarily new. Back in 1996, Israel smoked some terrorist by putting a bomb in his cell phone. When his phone rang and he put it to his ear, it took his head off. Okay. Movie enthusiast in me wants it to desperately be Mossad finding a way to overload their pagers over a radio band specific to the devices they were using, causing the batteries to overheat and causing explosions. I mean, how secure can these niche devices be? It could also be something much more boring, and they infiltrated the supply chain for this sort of thing, figured out which ones were going to Hezbollah, and rigged them to explode when Israel wanted. There are close to 1,500 wounded or dead terrorists. Senior Hezbollah terrorists speculated that malware may have caused the devices to heat up and explode. Well, the thing that was like, some of them were exploding later, that also sounds very much to me like overheating the battery. Yes. Because I've seen that, like, let's see here. I think I can find this. I think that there's stuff on this on YouTube. Overheated battery explodes. So here's some people. Yeah, there you go. Here's some people in a repair shop. There was a problem with the battery and it got too hot and exploded and set on fire. This has been a thing for a long time. And then the intelligence agencies were like, hey, maybe we can make that happen intentionally. That doesn't seem to be as much. I don't know. More fire, but less explosive, for example. I mean, it's probably going to vary a lot based on like how the device. Hey, well, I don't know. It could be that they just put explosives in it. Could be. They were new. That they were new pagers seems like a key point, doesn't it? Yeah, did you like forget that time Samsung made a bunch of Galaxy smartphones that exploded? Yeah, I do remember that. Dude. This reminds me of Stuxnet targeting centrifuges. Oh my gosh. I totally forgot about that, dude. That some of the biggest viruses that have ever come through computer networks were developed by intelligence agencies to undermine centrifuges and other things like that is like such a wild fact. Because you know, like, I remember when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, there was the one that I remember was Surcam. Oh my gosh, that thing got around. Everybody got that. And that was a huge deal. And I haven't really seen a real, like, a virus. I shouldn't talk. I should knock on wood because, like, something's going to happen now because I talked about it, right? But I haven't really seen a really widespread virus in a long time since then. But then you look at it and you're kind of like, yeah, but I bet you that intelligence agencies have stuff. I bet you that they have stuff. Like if the United States and Russia went to war, that's one of the things this is like one of those things that I frequently have like daydream nightmares about. Is that like there's some sort of a war between the United States and Russia, and as a consequence of the war, like the internet and pretty much everything else just gets taken out. Like maybe it would come in the form of a virus, just shutting everything down and at least for a week, you know, all communication being disrupted. But what if it came in the form of like an EMP bomb, you know? Like an EMP bomb in the United States. Did you ever see, what was that TV show that What's Her Bucket was famous for? Dark Angel or something like that? Jessica Alba, is that her name? Yeah, Jessica Alba, and she became famous from that show. And it was, the premise of it was basically that there was an EMP took out like everything in the US. And I'm kind of thinking like, I don't think that civilization would fare as well as it does in this show if that happened. Like, I think that it would, like, send us back to the Stone Age. Probably most people would die, and then it would take you, like, 100 years to build the tech back up. Ugh. I think about that all the time. And like the thing is that like I kind of think that Russia probably does have the ability to do things like that. Hey Paul, it seems obvious really, like if you watch an ammonium nitrate explosion, you can almost always tell due to the explosion. Same with this standby. Earlier comments on how. I didn't see what you said. Or I don't remember. Runaway action of heat after a bit of heat to a lithium battery boom. Yeah, well, I do think it is probably lithium batteries overheating. I think it's very likely that it's lithium batteries overheating. But I think it's extremely likely that it's the batteries overheating. The question is, how did they cause all of them in that area to do so? Did they have a back door built into the pagers? What was the trigger? That's more interesting. We might find out. So it's one of those things where Israel's not going to tell us how it happened. Now going to tell us how it happened so that everybody is amazed. I don't know. Or will we just forever be in the dark and wonder? Quantitative computing is going to be a security problem? I think that, if it wasn't for the whole disaster that we had with, what are they called? CrowdStrike. If it wasn't for that disaster with CrowdStrike, I think that, CrowdStrike would have been a good stock to be in. Like, I think that computer security is going to become a much larger part of the industry. I'm kind of thinking about it. Like, if I wanted to make a switch right now, I do site reliability engineering. And one of the things I like about site reliability engineering is like I can go in and I can make it, find changes to the performance of the system that can reduce how much resources we're using and save the company like real money. So like when you can have a direct impact like that, I think that makes you a really valuable person. But like it seems to me like you can make more money as a machine learning engineer right now. But is that all hype? Is that actually like the way forward? Because I think that there's probably more growth to come in the cybersecurity industry. At least in the next 5 years. In the next 5 years, I think that there will be more growth in cybersecurity than AI. But I guess it's a tough call. Either way, they're both going to be pretty high growth areas. And the cybersecurity part is very hard. You really need the right person. I can kind of do that stuff. Maybe I should go that way. I don't know. Probably going to stay doing site reliability. Okay, guys, it's time for me to get going. Probably said like too many crazy things today, but afford me the flexibility to try and say things to get the real point across, which is that there are people being disserved and that they're going to turn towards potentially negative politics in order to get what is going to help them. And I think that political parties should pay more attention to that. That was my point. You can't just talk to them. You have to actually like stop shipping their jobs to China. So I appreciate you. I know that you guys here are like that. So we'd be pretty good. Tomorrow's going to be the most interesting day of the year, possibly. I mean, like, I've never seen a Federal Reserve meeting this close, and today I did not get the kind of action that I thought. So, it was a minor downtrend today, which just kind of puts us back into who knows what's going to happen territory. So, don't miss it. Tomorrow is going to be crazy. Until then, stay excellent.